Mark, 29 years old, stood at the living room window of his cozy apartment with a mug of freshly brewed tea, gazing out at the city lights. The soft glow from the street lamps outside illuminated the curtains, creating a warm, inviting backdrop. Chloe, his wife of a few months, entered the room just in time to see him absent-mindedly tap his fingers against the windowsill. She smiled, knowing that Mark's creative mind was always churning, always seeking the next spark of inspiration. She was 27, and after a few years of dating, they had married in a small ceremony that felt more intimate than grand. "Lost in thought again?" she teased, approaching him and looping her arms around his waist. He turned, kissed her forehead gently, and offered a grin. "You know me too well. I was thinking about the new poster design I have to finalize next week. The client wants something minimalist, but I'm feeling this urge to go bold with the color palette. I'm stuck between listening to their request or trying to expand their vision." Chloe tilted her head in sympathy. "I think you'll find a middle ground. Your strength has always been figuring out what people really want, even when they don't know how to express it." They moved over to the couch, settling in. The space was a blend of Mark's artistic flair, bright abstract paintings, an open shelf full of art books, and Chloe's preference for neat modern lines. A single decorative rug beneath the coffee table gave the room a cozy, unified feel. It was a new home for them, purchased right after the wedding, and they were slowly filling it with memories. That night, they had decided to open up a conversation about fantasies and dreams they had never before disclosed. Initially, it was simply meant to bond them further as newlyweds. Over the weeks that followed, they began discussing little secrets or confessions they had never revealed to anyone else. Sometimes it was silly, like Chloe admitting she secretly loved to watch certain cheesy TV dramas late at night, or Mark's habit of singing show tunes loudly when home alone. Nothing so far had felt especially shocking or vulnerable, until Mark hinted he had something else on his mind. Chloe saw it in the way he kept biting his lip. He seemed nervous, almost afraid to put his feelings into words. "Mark," she said gently, "we promised honesty, remember? You can tell me." He took a deep breath. "I'm worried you'll think it's weird, or that you might look at me differently afterward." Her hand found his. "I'd never judge you. You know that. We married each other because we trust each other. So whatever it is, just tell me." Mark swallowed, pressed his palms against his knees, and cleared his throat. "All right," he began slowly. "I've always had this curiosity. I've never really told anyone about it. I mean, I've tried to push it out of my mind or bury it, but it doesn't go away." Chloe's gaze remained steady, though curiosity flickered in her eyes. "Okay, go on." "I like women's clothing." Mark released the words in a single exhale, as though they had been trapped inside him for years. "It's not about wanting to change who I am or about who I'm attracted to. I don't want you to doubt my love for you. It's just, sometimes I want to feel the fabrics, the designs, the styles that I see in women's clothes, and lingerie too. The look of lace, the softness of silk. I've just always found something about it aesthetically pleasing." Chloe was quiet for a moment. He watched a flurry of emotions cross her face, surprise, curiosity, and perhaps a hint of confusion. Eventually, her grip on his hand tightened slightly. "I don't think it's weird," she said, her voice steady but gentle. "I just didn't know. Did you ever try it before?" "A few times," he admitted, cheeks warming. "I was too nervous about being judged, so I never let myself explore much. But the thought lingered. Every once in a while it would pop up, and then I'd push it back down, telling myself it was probably too strange." A brief pause passed between them. The hum of the refrigerator in the adjacent kitchen was the only sound in the stillness. Chloe inhaled and let out a long, soft sigh. Mark, I love you. If you have this desire, I'm not going to mock you or see you in a lesser light. It's just different from what I expected, but that doesn't mean I won't try to understand. Relief flooded Mark's features. His shoulders sagged as though a heavy weight had just lifted from them. He exhaled in silent gratitude before placing a hand over hers. I was so afraid you'd react badly. Thank you for not doing that. Chloe gave him a small, reassuring smile. We're partners. This is our marriage. As long as we keep talking and listening, we can figure anything out. She paused, looking as though an idea was forming. So, how about we explore this together? Like, gradually. Mark blinked. You'd be okay with that? If it's something that's important to you, I want to at least see where it leads. I don't want you hiding anything or feeling lonely with your thoughts. Let's just do it step by step. And if anything feels too strange for either of us, we talk it through. Deal? He nodded enthusiastically. Deal. They sat together for a while, discussing boundaries and how they might proceed. Mark's excitement made him talk fast, but Chloe's occasional questions grounded the conversation. In bed that night, they held hands under the covers until they fell asleep, both feeling that a major door had been opened. While it was thrilling in its novelty, it also carried a certain weight. Neither was entirely sure what was about to come next, but they were determined to face it with honesty and care. A few days later, Chloe found herself at a local shopping mall, browsing through racks of lingerie. She felt a strange combination of amusement and determination. She had come here initially for a few items for herself, but Mark's confession nudged her to look around with new eyes. As she thumbed through lace-trimmed pieces, she considered which designs might fit Mark's preference. Not necessarily something overly elaborate, but perhaps a comfortable fabric. It felt surreal that she was exploring this idea for her husband. A sales associate, noticing her hesitant expression, walked over. Looking for something particular? The associate asked politely. Oh, Chloe said, a little flustered. I'm just trying to find the right item, maybe something soft, not too complicated. I recommend this section, the associate said, gesturing a few feet away. We have a variety of satin and cotton blends that are both comfortable and cute. Chloe thanked her, strolling over to examine some simpler pieces. She didn't want to pick anything too frilly at first. She settled on a light satin pair of briefs and a matching camisole, something that felt gentle enough to test the waters. It was strange, trying to guess Mark's size. She used her knowledge of his waist and shoulders to approximate, hoping it would work. After a moment's hesitation, she added a delicate robe to the haul and went to the register, trying not to feel self-conscious. That night, as Mark went over some sketches for work, Chloe quietly placed the shopping bag on the kitchen counter. Hey, she called, I have a surprise. He looked up from his notepad. For me? She offered a warm, if slightly nervous smile. Sort of. I picked out something. It's just the beginning, okay? Mark rose from his seat and approached the bag. He peeked inside and felt a rush of gratitude surge through his chest. He glanced at Chloe, then gently lifted the satin briefs and camisole in his hands. Wow, he murmured, swallowing hard. You really did this for me? I did, she replied. I want to help you explore, and maybe it'll help me understand. He set the items down carefully, as if they were precious artifacts. Then he pulled her in for a grateful hug. I appreciate this so much. Thank you for not thinking I'm odd. Chloe laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. You're not odd. You're just you. Mark's eyes flickered between relief and excitement. Do you want me to try them on now? Only if you feel comfortable. I'm not pressuring you. We can wait. He shook his head. No, I want to. I think I've kept this hidden so long that doing it with you feels like a real step toward being closer. Chloe followed him into their bedroom. As Mark stepped into the bathroom to change, she sat on the bed, smoothing down the comforter nervously. She felt butterflies flutter in her stomach, not from revulsion or fear, but from the strangeness of the situation. This was new for both of them, and she wanted to be supportive. When Mark finally emerged, wearing the satin briefs and camisole under the robe, Chloe stared with wide eyes. He looked both vulnerable and oddly at ease. "Is it okay?" he asked, almost in a whisper. She nodded, taking a moment to speak. "Yes, it's just different seeing you like this. But you look good. How do you feel?" Mark looked down at the satin running along his hips. His cheeks were flushed. "Honestly, I feel lighter. It's so soft. And I'm not hiding. That's a relief." Chloe reached out a hand, and he came closer. The robe swished lightly around him. She brushed a finger along the camisole's neckline, feeling the fine texture. "It does feel soft. I can see why you like it." He sat beside her, and for a moment they were quiet, letting the newness of this moment sink in. Then Chloe turned to him with a small, reassuring grin. "Let's watch a movie like this," she said. "Unless you'd rather change?" He blinked, startled. "You wouldn't mind?" She gave a shrug. "If you're comfortable, I'm willing. We can treat it like a normal evening, right?" Mark's heart swelled. "Yeah, I'd like that." So they went to the living room, selected a light-hearted comedy, and settled on the couch. They laughed at the silly scenes, occasionally making playful remarks about the characters. Mark drew his knees up beneath him, draping the robe over them, feeling more at peace than he had anticipated. Chloe would glance over at him from time to time, not out of discomfort, but a gentle curiosity. By the end of the film, she felt a sense of closeness she'd never quite experienced before. It was as if they had crossed into a new territory in their relationship, forging a deeper understanding of one another without losing the love that was always there. Over the following weeks, they explored further. Sometimes it was Mark experimenting with a bit of makeup, a tinted lip balm, some mascara, while Chloe offered pointers. Other times, they strolled through clothing stores, picking out a blouse or skirt Mark might want to try, with Chloe encouraging him to experiment cautiously. It wasn't always simple or effortless. Chloe had moments of hesitation, especially the first time he wore a skirt around the apartment. She would find herself staring, her mind trying to reconcile the Mark she knew with this new image. Yet she also recognized that it made him happy. One evening, while sipping wine on the balcony, Chloe decided to voice one of her concerns. "Mark, can I ask something honest?" "Of course," he replied, setting down his glass. "I want us to keep being open." She exhaled slowly. "Do you think this is going to grow bigger than just something at home? Like, are you hoping to wear these clothes in public or maybe around friends?" Mark's expression turned thoughtful. "I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes I have this urge to just be free to dress how I want without worrying what people think. But then I get scared of judgment or hurting you or making you feel uncomfortable if others see us." Chloe looked at him earnestly. "I'm not saying no. I just want to understand if that's something you want. Because it's different to do it at home, and it's another thing to do it outside. People can be harsh." He let out a heavy breath. "I know, and I don't want to put you in a difficult position. Right now, maybe I'm fine just here, in our own space, but I can't promise it'll stay that way." She nodded, reaching for his hand. "Thanks for letting me know. We'll figure it out if the time comes. I just don't want to be blindsided." He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "You won't be." Their life progressed with the usual rhythms of marriage, seasoned now with the addition of this new aspect of Mark's personal expression. Work was still demanding. Chloe found herself spearheading a marketing campaign for a major client, requiring late nights at the office. Mark, meanwhile, juggled various design projects, some for corporate clients, others for smaller indie bands or local shops that sought his edgy aesthetic. In the quiet moments when they were both at home, usually late evenings or lazy Sundays, they would talk about what Mark liked about certain fabrics or cuts. Sometimes they'd watch online tutorials together, hairstyling, basic makeup, and even how to choose flattering clothing shapes. Chloe approached it with a mix of curiosity and concern. She wanted to stay supportive, but every so often, a twinge of insecurity surfaced. One night, as Mark was excitedly discussing the differences between chiffon and silk, Chloe couldn't hide a fleeting sadness. Mark noticed immediately, his brows knitting in worry. "Chloe, you okay?" She pressed her lips together. "I'm trying not to let it bother me, but there's this small voice in my head that wonders, am I not enough on my own? Does the excitement you feel wearing these things replace the excitement you feel with me?" He touched her arm gently. "Never. Chloe, what I feel when I wear these clothes has nothing to do with replacing you. It's just, I've always liked the artistic and aesthetic side of fashion, especially the kind usually aimed at women. It doesn't mean I love you any less or that you don't excite me." She glanced down, fiddling with her wedding ring. "I believe you. It's just new territory for me, you know. I know you're still you, but I also see a different version of you. And sometimes it's jarring." Mark nodded sympathetically. "I understand. I don't want you to think I'm ignoring your feelings. If it ever gets too overwhelming, please tell me." Chloe managed a faint smile. "I will. I promise." She leaned into him, letting him put an arm around her shoulders. "I do want to keep going. I just need you to know that every once in a while, I might have these moments." He kissed the top of her head, feeling gratitude well up again. "I get it. I'm here to listen. I love you more than anything." For a moment, they simply held each other, soaking in the quiet hum of the apartment, the gentle ticking of the clock on the wall. Despite the occasional challenges, they felt united in the desire to stay close. Another turning point arrived on Chloe's birthday. They had planned a small get-together with close friends, nothing extravagant, just dinner and laughter in their living room. Mark insisted on doing most of the cooking, while Chloe arranged the music and drinks. They invited half a dozen people, longtime friends, plus a couple they had met on their honeymoon cruise. The evening was lively, with chatter filling the space. As everyone sat around, trading stories and jokes, Chloe caught Mark exchanging glances with her. She recognized that subtle question in his eyes. Did he dare wear any of the clothing they had chosen together in front of other people? He had, up to now, kept it private in their home when no one else was around. Chloe flashed him a small look of reassurance. She wasn't entirely prepared for him to fully cross that threshold tonight. But if he wanted something small, maybe painting his nails or wearing a subtle blouse, she trusted him to decide. When Mark emerged from the bedroom just before dinner was served, he looked almost the same as usual, except for a delicate floral top that had slightly puffy sleeves and a narrower cut. It was subtle enough that it could pass as a unisex design, but for those who looked closely, it was distinctly feminine in style. He paired it with dark jeans and his usual sneakers. Most of the friends were busy chatting, not paying much attention. But their friend Serena, who worked as a freelance photographer, immediately noticed the blouse. "Hey Mark, that's a nice top. Where'd you get it?" He hesitated, glancing at Chloe, who offered him an encouraging nod. "Oh, thanks," he answered, trying to keep his tone light. I found it at a boutique downtown. Serena's eyes lit up. I love the print. It's kind of vintage inspired, right? Yeah, Mark replied, relaxing a fraction. He turned to check on the pot simmering on the stove. It's got a bit of a retro vibe. That small exchange was enough for him to feel both a surge of adrenaline and a calming relief. He had worn something slightly feminine without scorn or surprise from his friends. The rest of the evening went smoothly, with no uncomfortable remarks. Chloe noticed Mark seemed happier than usual, more upbeat, more confident in hosting and joking around with their guests. Once everyone left, leaving behind empty plates and the lingering aroma of food, Chloe and Mark tidied up together in the quiet. She poked him gently in the ribs. You were brave tonight, she said, nodding at his blouse. I'm proud of you. A grin spread across his face. Thanks. It felt good, and no one freaked out. She laughed softly. It's a relief, right? Little steps. Yeah, he agreed, collecting some cups. Little steps. Over time, those little steps became more natural. Mark built a modest collection of clothes he liked, items that Chloe sometimes borrowed as well. They found that they had similar tastes in certain floral prints. He also started experimenting with short wigs in the evenings, not because he wanted to hide his hair, but because he was curious about how different styles framed his face. Chloe gamely helped him pick out shapes that worked. There were many comedic moments when a certain wig looked so out of place that they burst into laughter, snapping pictures on their phones to remember the silliness. They grew more comfortable sharing this side of Mark's life with a small circle of close friends. Not all the reactions were as casual as Serena's. One friend, upon seeing Mark in a lacy blouse, visibly hesitated, as though not knowing what to say, but she managed a polite nod in the end. Another friend was openly supportive and thought it was the coolest thing, as he put it. Through it all, Chloe observed Mark blossom in ways she hadn't seen before. He seemed more at ease in his skin, more alive in his creative pursuits. Still, it wasn't without moments of strain. A few weeks after Mark's small foray into wearing the floral top at the gathering, Chloe's parents came to town. They had announced their visit on short notice, expecting to stay for a weekend. Chloe felt a spike of anxiety, unsure how Mark wanted to handle things. While she knew her parents as fairly open-minded, she also recognized that seeing their son-in-law in traditionally feminine attire might catch them off guard. As soon as they got the call, she and Mark had a serious conversation. "How do you want to handle this?" she asked gently. "We can keep it low-key if you'd rather wait until we know how they might react." Mark pursed his lips, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "I don't want to lie or hide, but maybe I'll scale back a bit. I can wear what I want privately, but if it's going to cause drama, we can handle that conversation in a gentler way." Chloe nodded. "I think that's smart. It doesn't have to be all at once. Let's see how the visit goes." When her parents arrived, Mark greeted them in fairly neutral attire, a comfortable t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. For the first day, the subject never arose. They chatted about family news, shared stories, ate dinner together. Everything was warm and cordial. But on the second day, while Chloe and her mother were in the kitchen, her mother spotted a shopping bag filled with a couple of wigs and some lipstick Mark had been testing. The items were plainly visible. "Chloe," her mom said slowly, "what is this?" Chloe froze. She looked at her mother's puzzled expression and braced herself. "It's Mark's," she answered, deciding to be straightforward. "He likes wearing things that are traditionally considered for women. It's something personal he's been exploring." Her mother's eyebrows rose. She was silent for a moment, then asked, "Does he want to change something about himself?" Chloe's cheeks heated. "He's still Mark," she said, carefully avoiding certain terms or assumptions. "It's just something he enjoys. It's part of who he is. I'm okay with it, but we've been taking it slowly." Her mother stood there, lips tight. Then she softened, letting out a sigh. "I won't pretend to fully understand, but I won't judge him if it doesn't hurt anyone. Your father might need time to process it, though. Are you sure you're comfortable?" Chloe's heart pounded. "Sometimes it's confusing for me, but it also makes Mark happy. We're in this together." Her mother reached out and patted Chloe's hand. "You're adults. You figure out what works for you. I love you. So does your father. Just be patient with us." When Mark joined them, Chloe's mother offered a mild smile, though she looked uncertain. Chloe saw Mark's face tighten, realizing that something was up. She gave him a brief nod, letting him know she'd explain. And she did, later that evening, when her father was out picking up groceries. They sat around the kitchen table, Chloe, her mom, and Mark, and talked it out. It was awkward, but ultimately, they reached a space where her mother seemed willing to accept that Mark had his own style. Her father was mostly silent upon hearing the news, but he didn't explode or argue. He seemed more puzzled than anything else. While it was hardly a ringing endorsement, it wasn't condemnation. Chloe and Mark counted that as a win. One day, after a long week of deadlines, Mark suggested they go away for a weekend. "Somewhere quiet," he said. "A little bed and breakfast maybe, where we can just focus on each other." Chloe loved the idea. They booked a small cottage near a lake a couple hours' drive from the city. It was off-season, so they managed to find a place that was tranquil, with just enough other guests to make the lodge feel welcoming without being crowded. The cottage was nestled in a grove of trees, the lake just behind it, accessible by a short hiking path. As soon as they arrived, they felt a wave of calm wash over them. That evening, after a cozy dinner at a nearby diner, they returned to the cottage, lit the small fireplace, and cuddled on the couch. Mark, wearing a soft sweater he adored, rested his head in Chloe's lap. She played with his hair, relishing the peace and the crackle of the fire. They talked for hours about their hopes for the future, the kind of home they might want to buy someday, even the possibility of starting a family one day, if it felt right. The conversation drifted to Mark's newfound comfort in his clothing choices, and Chloe admitted, "I've gotten used to seeing you this way around the house. There's a part of me that wonders how it'll evolve years from now." He turned to look up at her. "I want to keep exploring, but I never want to lose you or the life we're building. That's my priority. I hope you know that." She ran a hand over his shoulder. "I do. And I need you to know that I might still get anxious sometimes, but I don't want to stifle what makes you feel alive. So, I'll let you know if something bothers me, and you let me know if you're holding back. That's our deal." He lifted himself to sit beside her, pulling her in for an embrace. They sat together, letting the warmth from the fireplace seep into their bones. Outside, through the window, they could see the moonlight reflecting off the lake. It all felt intimate, the kind of weekend away that reminded them why they had fallen in love in the first place. They were two people forging their own path, trusting that their bond could handle the unexpected curves. After their return to the city, Mark felt renewed energy. He threw himself into his design projects with greater fervor, often staying up late with a stylus and tablet, creating vibrant concepts for upcoming gigs. Chloe also stepped up in her marketing career, impressing her bosses with new campaign ideas. Though their schedules were busy, they carved out time in the evenings for dinner or a quick walk through the neighborhood. It was during one of these walks that Chloe noticed Mark seemed a bit restless. They had just passed by a vintage clothing store whose window display featured bright dresses and handbags. Mark's gaze lingered on a particular mannequin wearing a floral wrap dress. He sighed softly, then kept walking. Chloe, picking up on his mood, asked, "Everything all right?" Mark kicked at a pebble on the sidewalk. I'm just thinking, I'd really like to try dressing up more fully. Not just at home, wigs, makeup, something that really feels complete. But I don't know if that's crossing a line for you. Chloe pursed her lips. You want to go out, like to a cafe or something, in a full outfit? He nodded hesitantly. Yeah, even if we drive to a different part of town where nobody knows us, just to see what it feels like to be outside dressed that way. She wrapped an arm around his. I can see how important this is to you. Let's plan it, okay? We'll pick a day, decide on a place, and just do it. I can help you with your makeup if you want. Mark's face lit up, though a hint of tension remained in his expression. I'd like that. I'm excited but also scared. Chloe leaned her head against his shoulder as they continued walking. I'm with you. We'll figure it out together. That weekend, after carefully selecting an outfit, a flowing skirt, simple top, and a short bob wig, Mark spent an hour in front of the mirror, with Chloe offering gentle tips on eyeliner and lip color. Neither was an expert, but they laughed at their attempts, redoing smudged lines and using makeup remover wipes more than once. Finally, Mark stood in front of the mirror, scanning his reflection. The transformation was noticeable. With the wig framing his face, a little eye makeup, and the skirt's silhouette, he felt a charge of excitement, as though stepping into an alternate persona that still remained authentically him. Chloe gave him an encouraging nod. You look lovely, and also still like you. Ready? He took a shaky breath. Ready. They decided to go to a quiet cafe in a nearby district where it was less likely they'd bump into people they knew. The drive there was tense. Mark kept staring out the window, fingers tapping on the seat. Chloe reached over and gave his hand a squeeze at a red light. We can turn around any time, she said. He shook his head with determination. No, I want this. Once they entered the cafe, the smell of roasted coffee beans and the hum of conversations enveloped them. A handful of patrons looked up briefly, perhaps registering that Mark looked somewhat unusual, or maybe not recognizing anything out of the ordinary at first glance. It was hard to tell. Mark's heart pounded so loudly in his chest that he was sure everyone could hear it, yet no one said anything negative. The barista offered a friendly smile. They found a small table by the window. Mark sat down carefully, smoothing his skirt beneath his legs, feeling as if everyone was watching. But soon, as they sipped their cappuccinos, the anxiety began to ease. They chatted about work, joked about a new TV show they had started streaming. Eventually, Chloe reached across the table to straighten the collar of his blouse affectionately. How do you feel? She asked. Mark glanced around. A couple of customers typed away on laptops. Others had their heads bent, absorbed in conversation. No one seemed to be openly staring. I feel okay, he said, voice tinged with cautious relief. Nervous, but also proud that I didn't back down. Chloe's smile was soft. I'm proud of you too. When they finally left the cafe, Mark couldn't stop smiling. The drive home was filled with conversation about every detail, from the barista's slight pause to the one elderly couple who briefly looked their way. It was a milestone moment, one that added a new layer of closeness to their marriage. They had faced a fear together and found it not quite as terrifying as they had imagined. Over the months that followed, Mark integrated this new aspect into his life more smoothly. He didn't suddenly wear dresses to business meetings, nor did he feel the need to declare anything official. Sometimes he dressed in a feminine way at home or out with Chloe. Other times, he stuck to his usual jeans and t-shirts. He discovered that he loved having the freedom to choose whichever expression felt right on a given day. Chloe, for her part, continued to have ups and downs in her comfort level, but they had developed a knack for talking things through without letting resentment build. One Sunday morning, she woke up to find Mark quietly sketching at the dining table. He was in a robe, one of the satin ones they had purchased together, and he had a dreamy look in his eyes. She approached him with a yawn, kissing the top of his head. "What's on your mind?" "I had this thought," Mark said, turning the sketchbook so she could see. He had drawn a series of designs, dresses, skirts, and blouses that incorporated gender-neutral lines with subtle, elegant touches. "I'm thinking about creating a small clothing line. Nothing huge, just a personal project. Clothes for anyone who wants them, made with comfortable aesthetic fabrics. I'm not sure if it'll be a career shift or just a passion project, but I've got some ideas." Chloe's eyebrows rose in admiration. "That's ambitious. Could be really meaningful for people." He shrugged, looking excited. "I'm just doodling now, but maybe I can collaborate with someone who knows how to cut and sew professionally, and maybe you can help market it." She laughed. "You know I'd love to, but we'll need to do some serious planning. Budget, brand concept, the whole works. Still, it sounds like a wonderful idea." Mark beamed at her. "It does, doesn't it?" For the rest of the morning, they brainstormed. Chloe asked questions about who the target audience would be. Mark talked about wanting clothes that made people feel a little braver, a little less restricted by conventional expectations. He kept his language broad, not wanting to make any big statements, but hoping to offer simple inclusivity. Chloe admired the spark in his eyes, recalling how months ago he had been afraid to even mention an interest in wearing feminine garments. Now he was boldly imagining ways to express himself and possibly help others too. Inevitably, though, there were nights when doubts crept in. Chloe experienced one such moment after dinner at a mutual friend's place. During that gathering, Mark wore a beautiful blouse with small embroidered patterns, and while everyone behaved politely, Chloe sensed a subtle tension. A couple of acquaintances made awkward small talk, seemingly unsure whether to comment on Mark's clothing. One guest even stumbled on pronouns while addressing him, momentarily confused. Mark pretended not to notice, continuing the conversation with easy grace. On the drive home, Chloe stayed quiet, replaying the night's interactions in her head. She felt guilty that it was bothering her more than it seemed to bother Mark. Finally, Mark asked, "Hey, you've hardly said a word. Something up?" She gripped the steering wheel. "I'm sorry. I just keep thinking about how a few people seemed uncomfortable tonight." Mark's face fell. "Did it upset you that they reacted that way?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I wasn't upset at you. I just hate feeling that tension. It's one thing at home or in a cafe where people are strangers, but these are our friends, and I guess I had hoped they'd be a little more natural about it." Mark ran a hand through his hair. "I understand. It's awkward, but we can't control how others react. All we can do is keep being ourselves." She sighed, turning onto their street. "You're right. I just need some time to process, I guess. It's still not always easy for me either." He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Thank you for hanging in there with me." Back at their apartment, Chloe took a moment alone in the bedroom, mulling over her feelings. She reminded herself why she was doing this, because she loved Mark, and this was part of him. Eventually, the frustration and anxiety ebbed, replaced by a calmer resolve. "Hey," she said, rejoining Mark in the living room. He was slumped on the couch, staring at the ceiling. "I'm okay. Thank you for giving me a moment." He offered a faint smile. "I get it. I don't want to put pressure on you. I'm sorry if I make your life harder sometimes." She moved to sit next to him, lacing her fingers through his. "Don't say that. We both knew marriage would be about growing together. This is just a unique challenge. We'll keep talking, right?" He nodded. "Always." They hugged in the hush of the living room, the city lights outside casting soft shapes across the walls. The moment felt raw and necessary, a reminder that even with strong love, doubts could creep in. yet open communication kept them grounded. As another year passed in their marriage, Mark's small personal project designing inclusive clothing took shape. Through late-night research, he found a friend of a friend who knew pattern making, and they began creating prototypes. Chloe pitched in with marketing ideas, thoughtful branding that emphasized style and comfort rather than rigid definitions. They even tested some sample pieces themselves, occasionally modeling them in casual photo shoots at home. The day they received their first batch of finished garments, Mark pulled out each piece in awe, running his fingers over the seams. Chloe grinned, snapping photos. "This is it," she said. "You've got real, tangible items now." Mark was practically glowing. "I can't believe it. A few years ago, I wouldn't have dreamt I'd be doing this." They took turns trying on the clothes, giving feedback, making notes on what fit well and what needed adjustments. It was fun, a playful collaboration that reminded them how far they had come since that initial confession. Mark felt a surge of gratitude for Chloe's willingness to share this journey. Their marriage had deepened, faced challenges, and found strength in vulnerability. In celebration, they popped open a bottle of sparkling juice that evening. Sitting on the floor amidst heaps of fabric and half-finished sketches, they clinked glasses and laughed about how they'd become part-time designers. Chloe teased Mark about how he still needed to improve his sewing machine skills, and Mark joked that he'd leave the sewing to the professionals for now. The entire apartment felt charged with creative energy and affectionate warmth. On a breezy autumn afternoon, Mark and Chloe decided to stroll through a local park. Golden leaves drifted from the trees, carpeting the pathways. Mark wore a comfortable cardigan in a light pastel shade, paired with fitted pants and his favorite boots. Chloe teased that he looked like a style icon, especially with the subtle makeup he'd applied that morning. They walked hand in hand, watching children scamper through the leaves while parents chatted nearby. A bench near a pond offered a perfect resting spot, and they took a seat, watching ducks glide across the water. Chloe leaned on Mark's shoulder. "Remember how scared you were to tell me about your interest in clothes?" she mused. He chuckled softly. "It's like a lifetime ago." She nodded, reflecting on the roller coaster they had traversed. "I'm glad you shared it with me. It hasn't always been easy, but it's brought us closer in so many ways." He lifted her hand to his lips, giving her fingers a gentle kiss. "I feel the same way, and I know we'll keep navigating new things as they come up. That's marriage, right?" She snorted softly, a smile curving her lips. "Yeah, that's marriage. Two people forging ahead, trusting each other. But I wouldn't trade it for anything else." They sat there for a long time, letting the breeze ruffle their hair, content to be together without worrying what anyone else might think. A few onlookers might have noticed the subtle aspects of Mark's outfit, or the way Chloe leaned into him without any self-consciousness, but no one intruded on their serenity. Life continued in its ebb and flow. Mark and Chloe found a new comfort in discussing each other's needs and concerns before they spiraled into misunderstandings. There were still instances when a stray comment from a coworker or a baffled glance from a relative would cause brief tension, but they recovered faster now. They had built a bond that prioritized trust and reassurance. On a particularly cold winter evening, Mark was preparing hot cocoa in the kitchen. Chloe was in the living room sorting through some documents for her marketing job when he called her over. "Hey, you want marshmallows in yours?" She wandered into the kitchen, placing the papers aside. "Absolutely." He plopped a couple of marshmallows into each mug, then handed one to her. The comforting aroma of cocoa enveloped them. They leaned against the counter, sipping carefully. Through the window, they watched snowflakes swirl around a street lamp. "You know," Chloe said, blowing on the steam, "I was thinking about where we might be in a few years. Maybe a bigger place, maybe kids. Could you see that for us? Mark considered it, the mug warming his palms. I can, yeah, if we decide to. I'm ready to discuss it whenever you are. She studied him thoughtfully, noticing how a small lock of hair fell across his forehead. He had let his hair grow longer in recent months, partly because he liked the versatility when he wore a wig cap, partly because he just enjoyed the style. I guess it would be different, she remarked. People still have so many expectations for what a family should look like. But you and I have never been afraid of breaking expectations, have we? A smile stretched across his face. Definitely not. If we do expand our family, we'll figure it out in our own way. Setting down her mug, she slid her arms around his waist. The robe he wore had a soft texture under her touch. She rested her head on his chest, feeling the steadiness of his breath. Outside, the snow covered sidewalks and rooftops, rendering the world white and silent. Inside, the gentle hum of the heater and their beating hearts provided warmth and comfort. Mark, she murmured, I'm so glad we found this balance. I'm so glad you trusted me enough to open up. He ran a hand up and down her back, his voice full of affection. I'm grateful every day that you still choose me, that you still want me. She pressed her face against the fabric of his robe, taking in the moment. I always will. The following spring, on a mild evening, Mark and Chloe welcomed a small group of friends to celebrate the mini launch of Mark's new clothing project. They arranged a low-key event at a local boutique that had agreed to carry a few of Mark's pieces as a trial run. Clothes hung neatly on racks, flowing tops, simple dresses, comfortable pants with subtle design details. Some mannequins featured items styled in ways that could suit a range of tastes. Chloe stood beside Mark, greeting guests as they arrived. Serena, the photographer friend, busily snapped pictures, raving about how unique the collection was. A DJ friend provided background music, and a gentle buzz of excitement filled the air. Mark wore one of his own designs, a draped tunic, and Chloe wore another piece from the line, a classic blouse with embroidered accents along the neckline. They looked like a complementary pair, creative yet professional. At one point in the evening, a store patron wandered in, someone who hadn't come for the event but was curious about the display. She picked up a blouse, then asked Chloe some questions, assuming Chloe was part of the staff. Chloe explained the brand's concept about comfort and freedom for anyone who wanted to wear something outside the norm. The patron nodded, impressed, and ended up buying the blouse. Watching it happen, Mark felt a surge of joy unlike any he had experienced before. When the night wrapped up and the last guests were filtering out, Chloe found Mark leaning against a rack of clothes, looking exhausted but happy. She handed him a cup of water. You did it, she said, pride shining in her eyes. He took a sip, his voice almost shaky with emotion. I couldn't have done it without you. She rested a hand on his shoulder. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. They kissed softly, a public but tender gesture in the warm glow of the boutique's lights. Then they began tidying the place, chatting with the store owner about future opportunities. As they walked out into the night, hand in hand, they breathed in the spring air, feeling the city come alive around them. They had a shared sense of purpose, a shared dream, and a marriage that had weathered unexpected terrain. Shall we grab a late dinner? Chloe asked. Yes, please, Mark answered with a laugh. I'm starving. They strolled down the sidewalk, content in the knowledge that their relationship had grown deeper than they ever imagined. The early anxieties, the tentative experiments, the vulnerable confessions, all of it had tested them. But in choosing to walk through that journey together, they had found a profound closeness, one that blended honesty, affection, and a continuous willingness to adapt. Under the streetlights, Mark paused to look at Chloe. The glow lit up her face, highlighting her features. He reached out and pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "You know I love you, right?" Her laughter was soft and warm. "I know, and I love you too." They continued on their way, the gentle hum of traffic in the background, hearts settled with the certainty that whatever twists their future held, they would face them side by side, bound by trust, desire for each other's happiness, and the unwavering warmth of their bond.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.